and toys. Now, well, in my actual work, I'm a professional organizer, so I really like to start on time. So I'd like to do that, and we are recording, so it'll be available for people to look at later. First of all, thank you all for coming. I'm very glad to have new community members and community members. And I actually had lunch today with another new community member who's very interested in the committee, and wasn't on Front Porch Forum, so I hadn't heard about it, which raises the issue, like, how do we communicate about opportunities like this? Like Brian hadn't heard about the opportunity. So that's something for us all to keep in mind as we look for ways to be inclusive and make sure people hear about things. So they weren't able to come tonight because they just found out about it today at lunch. But I think that they'll probably come and join, be a part of the group as a community member moving forward. So that's fun. So our agenda today, I passed out, and I think everybody has it, is we're gonna do some welcome and introduction stuff. Part of that will be recognizing that we don't know what we don't know. Some of us who are here a little early, we're talking about, being a new person on a committee. Hi. We were saying that, being a new person on a committee in town.
There's one more.
You can grab another one from one of the offices too. Sometimes if you're like new on a committee in town and you like don't even really know how that's gonna roll. And I think that, we didn't really get any instructions. And so I think that's one of the things that we could also put on our list is, how does the town communicate with new community members about like what their job is and how to go about doing their job, and what the do's and the do nots, and who posts the meetings for the public and how do they post that, and because we don't really know how to do that. So we'll talk about that in the welcome and introduction. Is like, what we know, what we don't know, what we want to know. And then I wanted to share some background on how this committee came to be. And then we have organizational matters to sort of structure as a committee. And then just open discussion as we start to figure out sort of how this group wants to shape their vision and their mission and goals. And the select board, was happy to form the committee, but they really want to hear like, okay, what's going to happen? So this group gets to decide. So that's the first real item on our docket, and we may not finish that tonight, which is fine. But that's sort of how we're headed. So does anybody have any questions about the agenda or anything they want to add or see on there? Okay.
So I'm taking notes. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's another thing that I was thinking. I was at a select board meeting the other day, and I wondered why the town doesn't use AI notes.
I just don't think when I was on the board, it wasn't available.
Yeah.
So I've been off for a little bit, and I use AI notes in my own life because I can't facilitate and take notes at the same time.
Nobody can, neurologically, that's what I teach. Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna get a pen.
I didn't even see it.
One of the things I think that I'm understanding from one of the things that was on the select board meeting Monday night is about advisory committees versus non-advisory committees. So we're a non-advisory committee. That means that, we don't make any earth-shattering decisions for the town. We're not gonna unilaterally go do something or spend money in a way. So we're, as an advisory committee, we make recommendations to the town, to the select board, to the town administrator, and then we can support them and follow through on that. But we're not unilaterally doing things. So the open meeting law bar is a little bit different, I think, if I understand it, when I read it on the VLCT's website about, what we do and don't keep for minutes or notes and that type of thing. I think
You said we're non-advisory. No, we're advisory.
We're advisory.
Advisory, not like.
Exactly.
Non is more.
The select board is non-advisory, like they make decisions and they
Can do things.
Right. So we are advisory. So I think the most important thing for us to do is to keep track of actions and decisions. I don't think we necessarily need to keep track of the sausage making itself, and we are recording, so the community members who want to can watch that if they feel like it. But decisions we should keep track of, and I've already mentioned like 3 things that are things we might want to think about as a group, and I forgot what they were. Darla, did you by any chance catch those?
That we need instruction on what is our job and how do we do it.
Right, so like
we-
onboarding for committee
Yeah.
members.
Who posts meetings
Right.
to the public,
Right.
where do notes, where do notes and recordings, how do those go?
AI minutes,
How would they like to receive those and who do they go to?
right, right. And my questions are more global, not just sort of like specifically for this committee to the select board, but all committees and volunteers should get onboarding, and this could be the committee that sort of starts to craft the recommendation for what that looks like. And, could also recommend the minutes, the AI minutes, because that's an inclusive tool as well.
I'm not even seeing it as an option on their Zoom, so that might have something to do with it.
Right, the account that the town has.
Yeah.
They have to pay for that. Introduction activities. We do have some name tags here and Sharpies, so we can pass those around. Krista put hers on and she added pronouns, which we can talk about more as we go. So I will do that as well. So Porter is my name. She, her are my pronouns, and I may have just stuck that to the table.
Great, you pulled it out just in time.
Yeah.
There's a window.
As people introduce themselves and identify themselves, we also have the contact list, and if you didn't already, take a look and make sure that your contact info is correct on there. I think, Trevor, we didn't have a phone number for you, so if you want to make a note there. So what I thought we would do for introductions is 3 things. First is just introduce, your name and your pronouns. And then what I'd love to do is have us take a minute and have each person think about what they're interested in or excited about for equity in Bristol, and what they are hoping for with this committee. So I'll give you 2 different colors of sticky notes, and we can brainstorm for a minute on that. And then we'll do another exercise just sort of to identify sort of who's here in the room today. So if we want to start with the introductions, and then we'll move on to the exercise. So Porter Knight, she here, she, her, I'm here.
Aina Kaluna Shivei.
It's Blair. I'm Krista Seringa. I use she, her pronouns.
Brian Plant,
Darla Senecal, I use she, her pronouns.
Trevor Wilson, he, him.
Taylor Wolf, Plant, she, her. And I also want to welcome our guests. Thank you for coming, Jim. Okay, so let me, got some stickies. So the idea is, what do we hope for equity in Bristol? So if you want to just take a couple off the top, and Sharpies for everyone. Sharpies for everyone. And just, if you want to write on each Sharpie a word or a phrase, what you hope for equity in Bristol.
You want us to keep
Separate.
as a facilitator, each idea on a different
Separate idea and a
sticky?
different sticky, yeah, so grab a little bit of the stack. Jim? Okay, I'd love to hear your input. Okay, so the purple is for equity in Bristol. And then I'll pass around the green, and the green is like, what are your hopes or thoughts for our committee?
You're the ones that will go together.
To get away from you.
The accordion.
I'll play time.
Yeah. Isn't it though? So I'm sorry, you said purple.
Purple is what you hope for equity in Bristol, or what that means to you, equity in Bristol. Green is for hopes for the committee.
Well, there's a new pens with the smell.
Yeah. I do love a Sharpie. If you need more, there's more in the stack. And then when you're ready to put the cap on your pen, you can stick the green ones on the hopes for committee thing over there and the purple ones on the equity in Bristol one over there.
Yeah, I didn't get the green one.
Oh yeah, green one's there you go, green one's hopes for committee.
You have the green ones?
Yes, I have all of the green ones. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Let's see a couple more.
This is what? in a direct line.
You wanna switch?
Oh,
sorry.
if there's anybody here who feels warm, I
I'm
would
on the
like
back.
it.
Let's scoot around.
Switch down some more.
With more space on your side.
Also, you're taller now.
Oh, yeah, moving up.
Jim likes his seat back there.
I know.
That's that's your spot.
It should have a gold plaque on it.
You're like Sheldon, right? That's your spot, right?
I'm reading a book right now about like palace, like intrigue and stuff, and I thought the excite people said execute people. I was like, whoa! And just for a second, I was like, oh, that's a whole other approach.
Advisory in that class.
Yeah.
They can make lists, they.
It's a really different approach. It's just a split second, but I was like, ah. Someone's really laying in, coming in hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things that's fun with an exercise like this is, and I think Trevor was already starting to do it when we were up there, is he's like, I'm putting this next to that one because these are kind of similar, is that we see that we come with some similar, hopes and dreams and some different ones as well. Actually, Krista, since you are the last one to put up,
The start meeting.
or I don't think we need a theme just yet, but would you go ahead and just read it? If you
Oh, sure.
just read out the ones that
You
are
want
on
to start with the hopes?
Yeah, let's do the
Okay. The committee recognizes the systems that create inequity.
Mhm.
The committee recommendations to be here without
heard.
to be heard without gatekeeping. Open to understanding each other. Excite people, not execute.
Mhm, sure.
Encourage others to reflect without judgment or bias.
On bias.
On bias. Reflect without judgment on biases. That's good. Committee hopes create actionable items for the town with the most possible impact. To add value to the town, not a pet project easily dismissed. To engage with other communities. To identify strengths and weaknesses in Bristol's equity plans. New and energetic voices. Engaging of others. Learn from the past. Momentum, fun. Help establish standards and expectations for equity and inclusion in all town committees and work groups. Raise particular issues and brainstorm ways to reduce them. We invite input from as many community members as possible to help us determine our mission, vision, and goals. Foster open communication even when it's hard. And explore ways to increase transparency in town business.
So why don't you start? Did that make you think of something else?
Mm-hmm.
We'll wait for it.
Thanks.
And then we will make sure these get typed up. But we may play with it a little bit
Download.
later today when we're working on mission.
I think it'd be a good one to revisit every once in a while too. And
Yeah.
see like, where do we want to change things or
Or
continue adding to
are
it?
we on track?
Yeah.
Right, great. So we can use this sort of as a rudder for ourselves. What's the new one?
Encourage other committees to reflect on systems of power and decisions.
Yes, so we will definitely revisit this at various times, probably even tonight. Do you want to keep reading? Do you wanna pass
Sure.
it? All right, equity in Bristol, what do we hope for?
Equity in Bristol, belonging for all, no matter our color, origin, orientation. Everyone feels their input.
Impact, sorry, my
Impact.
handwriting's so bad.
No, you're great.
It
Everyone feels their
feels
impact.
slash acknowledges their impact. I recognize I wanted to add acknowledge after I wrote it and didn't have space.
Welcoming diversity. Everyone can acknowledge the value of all others. Events which openly invite everyone. Improve dialogue. Bring more voices to the table. Everyone feels valued and important. Strengthen community. People who are often marginalized because of their identity can have direct input into shaping decisions that are made in our community. Bristol identifies the key ingredients to making our town a place where people thrive, regardless of identity, and works together to accomplish these goals. Recognize privileges without guilt. No, there are no incidents of race or identity-based discrimination. People with physical disabilities can access every business in town. It's easier for those with mental health challenges or overcoming addiction. People who have no background in asking officials, it's okay to raise issues. People feel a sense of belonging. People have their basic needs met. All people feel welcome. Hope to make it more welcoming to lower income folks after homelessness. Bristol is known as open and welcoming. Town is dynamic. Others are willing to reflect on biases without judgment. For everyone to feel safe. Everyone feels welcome, safe for all, respect, and downtown businesses are thriving.
Anybody want to add anything there?
Sense a theme that if we feel there's equity, it builds the whole town, helps the town thrive.
Yeah, yeah. So 2 other exercises in the introduction. The next one is just to sort of see who's in the room. And so what I wanted to do was pass around this little handout, intersectionality wheel of privilege. And so there's power in the center, and then there's all of these little radiating things around from it. And so basically you take a marker, pick your color, and you color in each wheel or in each part of the wheel what reflects your experience. So for example, I'm going to say that I'm a homeowner and I drive, third party politics. So you can see that my wheel's starting to show, my little green in different areas. And then we'll just put these up so we can get a sense of the experiences of people in the room. So find yourself a color. And we'll see what it is. No. Yeah, no, somewhere. I probably should have done one because it's a photocopy one. Yeah, but I think I might have one here. Yeah.
Do you know if you choose monogamous, for example, but you could also pass as monogamous, do you choose one or the other?
That's a great question. I don't know, I think you can color whatever you want. I think there's another, like, there was one on there, but I had a question like, I am a widow, so I don't know whether that makes me monogamous marriage
Right,
or divorce separated polyamorous marriage.
right.
But I figured, well, I'm not in a monogamous marriage anymore, so I'm good on the outside.
What is the age, requirement for being a senior?
I think that you get to self-identify. You're a teenager, Betsy.
Well, I was quite a long time ago.
That's lived experience.
I have a lot of friends that are.
Right. And then when you're done, just take a piece of tape. I was wishing that I had a technological way. You can slide the white part underneath the other one, just so they'll all fit. Yeah, if I could have figured out how to do it electronically, so we could overlay them, I didn't know how to do that. That was outside of my zone. Transparency.
I'm
straight up
We
like
gave
that.
that away.
I
Or
had
that,
that
we let that go, but actually.
All colored on the transparency.
I think I actually have an old overhead projector in my barn.
That's it.
I'm just gonna say I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you have that in your barn.
I know. It's one of those,
But-
it was a crafty
think that's-
project.
Yeah, I think your barn sounds like my attic.
Yeah.
Porter, you would not,
And calling it a barn is really
I don't mind,
generous.
because it's not my.
because it's not your,
Exactly.
you would have a lot of fun.
No
It would be a
judgment
fun
and no
project.
opinion on other people's stuff.
Yep.
I do not judge.
Would be a great way to add transparency to the committee too, probably,
Yeah, who we are.
yeah,
Yeah.
without identifying any specific person.
Yeah.
Oh, that's when so like overlay would be still
Yeah.
That's
really
what we were
cool.
saying,
right?
yeah, if we had the old transparency thing. I mean, I might be able to figure out how to do that.
What if
Software.
So I'm sure like, because you can just like make the images slightly transparent and just kind of do that, but it wouldn't quite communicate the right thing. I mean, like you can do it in Canva, but
One could do it in Canva.
one could do it in
Because
Canva.
we're looking at our pronouns and you say you can do it in Canva.
Sorry,
I would have to say, no.
I'm using the royal you, anyone, perhaps someone could, I could do. I could do-
A little bit, yeah, and write down like a crazy rabbit hole.
Oh, Canvas.
Yeah,
It's,
I bet the kids love it.
I think some use it really well. If they're in art programs, they definitely use it.
Yeah.
I feel like everyone I know that like works at a nonprofit loves it. Because we're like, that's how we do everything. And like,
Yeah.
if you have any familiarity with like the Adobe suite, it's like, oh, wow, this is like it's a blast. Cause it's
Yeah.
just like Legos to like, it's like Legos compared to like building a real house to live in.
Yeah.
It's so fun. Yeah.
So yeah, the owl can't really see that. I don't know, Darla, if there's a way for it to, and we'll stick Betsy's up when she's finished.
If I come over here and go like this.
No, it's only
No.
showing the thing behind you. It's not.
That's
I
kind
think
of,
I make noise.
Blah, 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 blah. Is that
Oh,
any
it almost did it. That almost worked.
better?
Here, move a little closer
I
this
think it was
way.
the noise.
I need to keep talking.
Yeah,
so-
keep talking and keep moving a little bit
How
over.
long should I? keep
Yeah, I don't know.
talking?
oh, it's in there, it's in there, there it goes, there it
And
goes.
then.
There it is.
Mhm.
Perfect.
Oh,
no.
Too far.
The rest of us need to be quiet, I think.
Yeah,
Took a photo of it.
but Darla, actually, why don't you,
Put it in
so
our notes.
Betsy's gonna put hers up, why don't you go back to that spot and, in order to draw the owl's attention to yourself, just make some observations on that, you know, and so then even if they can't see it, they, you can be sharing sort of what you're seeing or
Okay,
noticing.
good, that's it.
Okay. Observations, let's see. What am I seeing? I am seeing, when I look at, there's a lot of folks that are near the power circle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the, 7 of us here tonight. So that's very interesting to me. There are, I'm trying to think of where the commonalities are. Again, those layovers would be awesome. What else am I noticing? Try to pull out certain things that I.
Is there anything there that surprises you about us as a group collectively?
I mean, not that I know all of you, because I don't, but living in Bristol, knowing that there's similarities but differences, like I'm like thinking of the religion piece I'm looking at on here, and it's sort of a little bit all over. So that's kind of interesting to me, and not like a wow to me. It's that doesn't surprise me, because Bristol tends to, in my experience, tends to have a lot of different spiritual people, religious people, and honors that. Let's see. Looks like when I look at the one that asks if you're salaried or manual labor, it looks like we're all. And we've got a couple that are not. Most everyone is salaried. There are a couple that there are 2 that are not. That's interesting. Most everyone identifies as middle class with some borderline feeling that this is labeled as poor, so interesting.
So we can segue that into the last introduction piece, which is just to give people a chance, if you want to share a sentence or 2 briefly about you know, what either brings you to the committee or what your experience in this type of work is, if you have any. And I know some people have a whole lot of experience and some may not have any, but just sort of a little brief, sort of like, here's what brings me here today and here's sort of where I'm coming from with equity work. Anyone can start.
I'm like, sure.
And tell us your name again, just in case people are practicing that.
So I'm Taylor Welch Plant. I use she, her pronouns. So I am the director of the Hub Teen Center here in town. And so I work for the town of Bristol, and I'm a Bristol resident. And so my role in the Hub allows me to interact with teens, and over my time at the Hub, it's ranged kind of who we see, but often it is those that are the teens that come from some of the more vulnerable or most vulnerable households in the community, because kind of implicitly the Hub, which is a third space, which does provide free food and free electronics and free many things to try to, like, with the goal specifically of gapping barriers and like the like things that may not be at home. We often have kids come in to like access those resources, and also just a safe place. But then we have kids that are not necessarily fall into that category, which I think is really great, because you have that third place, which doesn't necessarily denote anyone with any, like, it's not necessarily obvious where someone falls, but it's a meeting place for folks in.
What do you mean by third space?
A third space is, so it's a place that isn't home and isn't work, is the traditional concept. So the initial thought is from a book in the 50s where this sociologist like went out and did a bunch of research and then wrote a book about it. And I have a name and I forget what it is, but so the concept is it's this not home, not work, it's this community space. And there are a couple of like designations that it has to have where you can spend time without spending money. Where you feel comfortable, everyone feels comfortable being there. So anyone from any walks of life can walk in and feel safe to exist there for hours on end. And where you might run into other community members, and there's a whole bunch of other things, other community members, and you have like implicit value in that space and you are like welcome there. So it's and there's on a national level, in a Vermont, like local level in Vermont, third spaces are gaining more traction. People are actively trying to create more of them as they have fallen to the wayside because churches and diners and these other things used to serve as them, but they aren't as common. So the teen center is really lucky to provide that to teens. But we see a lot of people in all different sectors. And then also because my interaction with teens, many boards want me to be a voice on different boards. So I also I've been going to the CEJY meetings, which is the Council for Equitable Youth Justice, which is the Governor's Council, which I'm not formally on because I have to apply and I just haven't yet. But so I've been talking to them about youth justice restructuring in our state. And talking to other agencies. We work closely with Turning Point to make sure that they have build relationships with our teens for when conversations come up and things need to be happen. And we try to work with as many different agencies to provide the things and so the gaps. That was longer than a sentence, so I'm sorry.
Thank you for acknowledging that because she went first and
I'm sorry.
I don't want to set a precedent.
Yeah, no, that was much longer, and I was like, oh no,
We're not gonna drag anyone off the hook.
Yeah, it was a lot longer than a sentence, so sorry.
Got it.
It was very interesting.
Yeah.
We'll go next. Trevor Wilson, he, him. So what brings me to the committee and or experience, I moved here just about a little over a year ago from California, near the San Francisco Bay Area, where I spent a lot of time volunteering, almost like every Saturday, basically, volunteering with a youth group in San Francisco. And equity was always a topic of conversation. Very diverse community in the Mission District in San Francisco. They brought in youth from all over the San Francisco Bay Area. And then I came here and that's the part of culture that I'm actually having the most trouble adjusting to here, is the diversity is very different here. So I want to help make sure that there are ways to be equitable, because I think it's harder to have the conversation when it's not as visible. And then I also have a particular interest in equity in healthcare. So I've recently joined the board at Mountain Community Health, and if anyone is interested, they are looking for at least one more board member. Little plug.
Can we just keep going around the room?
Oh, okay, yes. I have a tendency to over jump in and overshare, so I was holding back. But Darla Sedical, she, her, I was just thinking when I came in today, I was thinking about how long have I lived in Bristol? I've lived in Bristol over 40 years now. It's like weird to say that out loud. But so Bristol really truly is my home, and I raised my kids here. And I just spent 4 years on the select board. I just finished with that. And I was at once upon a time the recreation director for 17 years, or part of that time I was the director. So dealing with a lot of kids and families in our community. The work that I do now for the nonprofit that I work for also is a lot of work with kids in communities prenatal through age 8. So I'm hearing a lot about social emotional well-being, kids on the spectrum, teacher burnout, families not having basic needs. All of these things are bubbling up for families, and it's crisis point across the state. The houselessness issue that we have, here in Addison County didn't really touch us until the last few years, and now we see it more and more often. And there's more and more families that are being affected by that. It's not just the odd person. There are definitely children that are also part of that group, and that's become part of my work, acknowledging that and finding out how we can move the needle and get some support for folks. And also understanding that equity doesn't mean the same for everyone. It's what are the needs? What are the needs and how can we fill them? And if we can't, who can? How can we help everyone? And acknowledging maybe sometimes we can't.
Hi, my name is Brian Plant II. I'm here by accident. I was just talking to three persons from Markers. I come at this from a lot of different perspectives. Because typically when I hear about equity in the news, I roll my eyes because they're implementing a program, then depending on the business, the city, or college, then they end up getting themselves in trouble because they have the best of intentions and then go down the wrong path. So there's some curiosity, I guess, in trying to learn, what the thoughts are. Maybe challenge a few of my own biases. But while I don't have 40 years in Bristol, I have 9 months. I'm one of the new folks that moved into the firehouse apartments down here. So coming out of homelessness, I get help for mental health challenges with CSAC. And as you'll find, I'll probably be attending a fair amount of meetings via Zoom. I've got a really bad back, so I figured at least the first one, I'd make sure I was here. So I'm coming at from different perspectives. I don't, obviously I'm straight white male, so that's, not what you normally think of as diversity, but some of my experiences, I think would come in handy. I've been given some opportunities in the last, pretty much since I moved in. Go to Montpelier, testify about homelessness a couple times. Also gave a testimonial in January for mental health advocacy. It was just published in the Counterpoint newsletter. I had a meeting various state legislators. Had an opportunity. There was a program that just ended called the Affordable Connectivity Program. So I'm like, well, I have a lot of peers that were really worried about it because their finances are very tight. So I'm like, well, what's the sense of knowing a few people that maybe I could kick the tires on this? So I did some reaching out on my own and got actually an overwhelming response from local legislators, and actually got to hear back from Balance, Welch, and Sanders offices, and ended up getting interviewed by Channel 5 News to advocate for it. So it's now in Washington's hands. So I did my part. And it's also opened up a couple other opportunities. The Addison Housing Works just voted me on their board. Just pending a background check. CSAC, I'll be on their board. Vermont State Housing Authority reached out to me after I tore them a new butthole, sorry. For terrible experiences I had with them, they sought me out, and I was just appointed to their board of commissioners. And as of Monday night, I'm here working with you folks. So got a lot to learn, and very stuck in my ways of all things. So if I ask questions and whatnot, it's not trying to be a jerk or whatnot. It's just like different perspective on things, lean slightly conservative. So more centered, right? Both sides I think go too far sometimes. Anyway, so I'm here.
I'm Krista. I use she, her pronouns. And I do some of this work around equity and inclusion professionally, but I hope to be able to be in this space more from a personal level and just allow this process to happen how it needs to happen. So I'm gonna try really hard to do that. And so personally, I'm here because I have a daughter with a physical disability who can't get around town. And for years, we've been frustrated by that. And really interested in it's sort of what got me on the school board at the first time, because I really like to think about systems change and not just immediate fixes like a ramp in a building, but like what are we doing as a whole community to make sure folks have what they need to thrive here. So I think that's what I'm hoping to think about is, you know, I think there's really important stuff that should happen right now, but I also want to know what the longevity and sustainability is of things that have a really high impact beyond meeting on this committee. And then the other thing I wanted to say is that I think I hope we can keep in mind that what you said, Darla, about 5 out of 7 of us being really in that inner wheel, because I think that means that it's really important for us to work hard to reach folks who aren't here to get their input. Like, I really hope we don't decide what the mission is or the vision. I think that would be a mistake. I think we need to really have folks tell us what we should be working on. And then I just want to appreciate all that you're doing. And I think, you know, I know my daughter, she does a lot of advocacy on her own, which is amazing, and also a lot of work. And so, you know, emotional labor, physical labor, all the things. So I think that's important for us to keep in mind as well. So.
I'm gonna go last because it'll segue into our next agenda item, so.
My name is Ainaka. I have lived in Bristol 16 years. I am a teacher, and I have been involved with equity work all my life because I have been advocating for myself as a woman in my country, where it's not very easy. And professionally, I have been an equity coach in my district for 5 years. When I was in my country, I never cared about the color of my skin till I arrived to this country and I become a woman of color, an immigrant, a alien. I have had like 7 different nouns already. And I think that the inequity that I see here at different levels keeps me in that work, in equity work. And I think that race is very important for me as a woman of color. And what you said about, oh, let's bring all the voices in town, sometimes seems like equitable, but it's not, because when the majority of the people is white, so unengaged, we are going to get that voice. And then we are going to say, no, but everybody had the opportunity. So I think that we need to be very careful with what voices we bring to the table and how loud can they be. So I think that we need to, I'm all about uplifting marginalized communities from all the categories, not only race, but because I feel race is something that I cannot take out of every night. So I advocate for race, being a minority, which we can talk about that term later. But yeah, but there is other LGBTQ people, people with disabilities, homelessness, you know, we have the whole bouquet, you know, here, all there. So I think that I'm very excited about this job. And thank you for the invitation. And thank you for your work too.
I'm starting, so don't thank me too much. I don't want my ego to get
You
too.
just brought a good experience to us. Important.
Yeah.
This kind of work has been just about the major piece of my entire life. And I mean, I started out as a minority person in a Jewish neighborhood, and the kids didn't understand how come we had a Christmas tree day when I was Jewish. And then in high school, I got lit up by Africa, which was getting its freedom just when I wanted to get mine. And the principal said, oh, would you like to start a club on Africa? You know, and so then they facilitated me being able to invite in speakers from African embassies that had just gotten to DC and nobody had ever heard of their country, and they were happy to come to a girls' school that I was going to. And anyway, then I got to know fire-breathing Angolan, and and seeing movies about why it was that countries needed to throw off colonial rule and the physical things that were done. Okay, so then, so then I was a sixties person, and my grandmother had been raised by her grandmother, who'd been a slave owner, and her cook who was black, had been raised by her grandmother, who'd been a slave, and these ladies were both living on the wrong side of the Civil War, and so I became very close to the black one, and I said, you can't let my grandmother talk to you like that, I mean, and I said, you just have to stand up to her. And finally she did, and my grandmother just ran upstairs and stopped bothering her. Okay, so I've, been dealing with those kinds of issues. Then I had my own kids. I was interested in religion, but I could never get both of them into clean diapers and into snowsuits at the same time, so I just went to whatever was opening. And so I went to, I had already, in college, I was hanging out with the Muslims, because the undergrads were all Jews and the graduate students were all Muslims from overseas. And so, and I was a blue-eyed blonde, and they just were really interested and wanted to get notches in their holsters. They came to their apartments to see their Tunisian seashells or whatever.
We're recording that.
It's all right, it's all true.
We're all
It's
learning about Betsy.
It's all true. Anyway, so I have had a very, multicultural experience. Meanwhile, my father was, my family's always been in politics, and so he ended up being responsible for passing, at that time, the nation's farthest reaching open housing law. So we got threats on our lives and bullets in the windows. And then once my kids got into nursery school and out of the house for a little while, I took a job as a construction worker, so far back that I had my picture in US News and World Report for doing it. And then let's see, what else? Okay, so my parents, who were refugees from the upper class and who had already figured out that those values were just totally bankrupt, but my grandmother was trying to teach me. So they were not shocked when I became a construction worker. My grandparents had some trouble with that, because they wanted me to be a debutante. And I did both, so I have a balanced portfolio. Anyway, so I, my least favorite times was when I was trying to deal with the upper class people, and it was really awful. And I have never made friends on the basis of income. Well, I have never wanted to dress like based on an income either, so I've always been kind of out of place. And so the people who have become my dearest friends tend to be from different marginalized groups, usually pretty well educated. But like before I came here, I was living next door to a Bangladeshi Muslim family. And we became so close that the parents let me do marriage counseling for them. And I just had looked into so many different religions, and I knew there were certain themes that, they all cover. So I would say, well, I'll bet your religion has this principle. And they'd say, yeah, it does, So we're very close. I haven't seen them for 10 years, but they just send me pictures of their daughter's wedding. And then I'm very close to an extended Navajo family. I mean, these people all consider me a family member. And then there was a black family, low-income black family next door to me in Connecticut. And I was very good friends with the mother for a while. And then finally, her little 6-year-old was being fondled too much by a white 13-year-old girl. And so I went and I said, you really need to like not let her have time with him. And she said, so what did he do wrong? I said, no. She, and like 10 minutes, she kept saying, but I don't understand what I need to do. I said, you just need to protect, and finally she said, are you telling me that you're taking the side of my little black boy against a white girl? And I said, yes, well, that made a difference. And then all of a sudden, they considered me family, and then they were talking to me at a totally different level. The Navajo woman has told me this stuff out of her parents and her life, which she has not told her adult children yet. It's like, I've been the keeper of the secrets for a lot of different marginalized people. And so I have a certain sensitivity that they aren't gonna present to us, but that I might be able to talk to somebody. So I thought I could be useful that way. And then I served for 3 years on a human rights commission. And so I know some good structures that work and get things done.
So this group brings longevity and perspective and different views. And, I'm much newer to equity work. But what brought me to this work was we have hosted a number of youth in our home over the years. So we've had 11 kids in our house that aren't kids that I gave birth to. And, my experience of Bristol with my biological kids and with all of the young people in our home of European descent is markedly different than the experience that the youth in our home who were darker hued. And particularly in high school, some of the things that happened were shocking to me. I simply couldn't imagine, because my experience of this community has always been so supportive and so familial and so kind and gentle. And that was a real surprise to me. And so I started being curious about the experience of people who walk in different shoes. And so over the years, that sort of led me where I am. And so the background of this committee is that the select board in 2021, I think at your initiation, am I wrong about that?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. When Darla was on the select board at the time, the select board passed a declaration of inclusion, which a number of municipalities have been invited to do. The Vermont League of Cities and Towns has been really promoting that. And Bristol was one of the earlier ones to do it. And then nothing really happened. And in 2022, I became aware of a grant through the Vermont Community Foundation, which was offering $10,000 to municipalities to support them in helping their community be more inclusive and invest in particularly employees' efforts at understanding what it means, what equity is, and how you can bring that to leadership. And so I approached the town administrator and offered to write the grant as a volunteer and to administer the grant as a volunteer, so that the town could get that $10,000 and use it to educate their employees primarily. And so we got that money and we did 5 trainings in that year. And also as part of that grant, there was a review of decision-making. which is something that I did primarily with support with the consultant that the town hired, and created a decision-making tool, which I tried out with the rec department, which I tried out with the planning commission, and I tried out with the energy committee, and they all thought it was great. The select board also thought it was great. I have never seen it used at any committee meeting since.
It lived on the table for a
I
long time,
referenced
but yeah.
And then we did an assessment of where the town was and made a report as to what could happen next to continue this work. Along the way in that first year, the Vermont Community Foundation reached out and said that they liked sort of the structure of what we were attempting to do, and asked if we wanted to apply for another $10,000 to continue the work in a second year, which was terrific because we did have a list of recommendations. And so when I submitted the report for year one and the next step recommendations, I also submitted the application for the grant year in round two. And the select board approved that. And then things happened at the town level, and it's taken a little while, but here you are. So the equity committee is the result of those 2 years of grant funding. And I wanted to give each of you a packet that has the grant report from year one, the next steps that came out of that report, and then the grant summary for year two. And so I'll leave you with that, but I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it necessarily today, but for the purposes of the recording, what I want to highlight is the types of things that were in the report for next steps. So it's a report for next steps. It's not a blueprint for what has to happen. To wit, the select board has not used it as such, but some of these things are happening, and these are just ideas for things that could occur at the town level. So it's divided into 4 different sections. So the first section is things the select board can do that were recommended in next steps. Apply for additional grant funds from the Community Foundation. Check. Create equity committee to pull in community input and guide the select board in continuing this work. Check. Develop a plan to make Bristol more ADA accessible. Authorize equity committee to work with local businesses to improve ADA downtown and work with recreation department to create ADA recreational opportunities on town parks. None of that has happened yet, except the last piece, which is in another project I'm involved in, spearheading greater access to the town parks. And so that's another grant cycle and other funding, but there's currently a engineering firm assessing Sycamore, Memorial, and Eagle Park for creative ways to make them more accessible to people with different mobilities. So I'm sure this committee will hear more about that as that continues. It was recommended the select board budget for welcome bags to welcome new residents and tenants to the community. That's money that's written into the VCF grant cycle for that. Budget for support of the library social justice discussion group speakers. That's money written into the Community Foundation grant for that. Budget for childcare and possibly transportation vouchers so people of limited means can participate, meaning volunteer, on committees and boards. So there's $1,000 in the Vermont Community Foundation, and the select board approved that grant application. So there's $1,000 here at the town so that people in the community who want to volunteer on a committee or commission could get vouchers for childcare or transportation if they needed it. We don't know how we're going to execute that. That might be something this committee looks into.
Yeah.
We have a new treasurer now who is open to exploring how this can work. But the money's there. We just have to create the program to make that possible. And then budget for a social worker position for the town to support mental health and safety needs of the community. That's something that they're working on with the police department. And then the last point for the select board is support the planning commission as they work to promote changes for zoning to add housing at low and mid price points. And they're working on that very actively. So a number of those things are in play. Some of them are ones that this committee might help push along a little further. For the equity committee, these were just ideas. Create all are welcome here banner in town and all are welcome here signs in store windows and for homes. There's money written in the VCF grant for that. Support and promote minority-owned businesses. Create a safe forum to invite feedback from community members about issues or experiences with inequity or discrimination, and to encourage suggestions. And it goes on to say that, that the town could partner with organizations such as the Vermont Professionals of Color Network to do that. Begin the process of equity mapping. An equity map is a tool that uses data to help leaders make informed decisions about investment and development opportunities and target the impact of proposed projects. There's money in the Vermont Community Foundation grant for that. Promote availability of language support services. So municipals, all municipal offices, businesses, schools know that that exists, because it does exist. Encourage diverse voices on committees and boards. So youth, people of color, people with different abilities, different perspectives. Collaborate with other agencies to create and promote restorative justice opportunities in Bristol. Create some type of palm card or handout with information and resources for individuals to report community incidents of discrimination or harm. There's money in the Community Foundation grant for that. Explore the town's readiness to join EPIC, which is the Ethical Performance Improvement Campaign at the League of Cities and Towns, or IDEAL, which is Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, Action, and Leadership through the State Office of Equity and Racial Justice. So these are two programs that exist to help towns do this type of work. Bristol is not ready to, we're not able to participate in either of those. Both of them require much greater investment of municipal commitment. That would mean the select board and town staff would have to say, we have time for this, we have energy and interest in this. And then the last two categories are things that the town administrator could do with help from the equity committee as needed, or help from a consultant. Place the Declaration of Inclusion and Driving Equity decision-making tool prominently on the website. Couldn't find it last night, looked hard. Click here button on the web page or other easy means for reporting incidents of discrimination or harm in town. Review and update job descriptions with inclusive language. There's money in the VCF grant for that. Schedule ongoing education for all employees and volunteers, including the select board. There's money in the VCF grant for that. Also develop an onboarding packet, twice a year DEI trainings for town employees and volunteers, and have posters in town and town buildings with inclusion statement, policy goals, and how and where to report incidents. Develop a palm card with info and resources to report internal incidents of discrimination and harm. There's money in the VCF grant for that. And then it was also recommended that the town support staff by developing a resource list for municipal employees for identity-based support. Engage community, including town employees and residents, in articulating our community's core values and principles related to equity in municipal governments. There's money in the VCF grant for that. Develop guidance for municipal leaders regarding expectations to model DEI principles and interrupt identity-based harm. There's money in the VCF grant for that. Identify staff needs for increasing capacity to identify and intervene in identity-based harm. One is about municipal leaders modeling, and the other is staff needs for identifying that, doing a survey or focus group. Amend and update town policies to reflect commitment to equity and inclusion, and to clarify protocol to report harm or discrimination. It sounds like a lot. It's really, some of these things are much easier than they sound. And a significant portion of the grant is designed to hire a consultant. The consultant that the town hired last time was Tabitha Moore with Evolution Consulting, who's agreed to continue with the town. So a lot of that money, like, she's available to help if the town simply makes the administrator or other town employees available to work with her to make these things happen. She will also work with this group to make those things happen as well. So you'll all get copies of that, but we don't need to get into those weeds right now, but I wanted to make sure that it's on the recording. So thank you for bearing with me while I went through that tomorrow. That's how it's done.
May I ask a question?
Of course.
The grant that you
can ask
mentioned,
questions too if you want. I know you've heard that before.
the grant that you mentioned, what's the time frame for that?
Well, I just wrote a request for an extension because it expires in July.
So we gotta get to work.
We got this grant in May, but there were just some complicated things at the town last year.
Yeah.
And so they they've done a couple of things, but most of it was sort of waiting on getting this committee going. And here you are. Thank you, yay. The Community Foundation is perfectly happy to let this go till next July. They've extended till the end of next year. We already have the money. So it's not a do it and reimbursement. They gave the town the money with the expectation that we're gonna spend it according to the way that we proposed. But if it's, evolves such as the select board or the administrator or the equity committee says, we'd like to shift some of those funds and do this instead, I'm sure the Community Foundation would be happy to entertain a grant amendment for that. And if we haven't spent it all by next July, I don't think they're gonna make us give it back. We just are gonna have to tell them why it wasn't spent, what our plans are for the money and how it will be used ultimately. So they're not impatient for it to happen. They're eager to see Bristol succeed. But there's no concerns there. So other questions about sort of the background of how we got where we are, because that sort of brings us to some organizational matters and then determining, our next steps as a group. Oh, and I should say, so I'm not on this committee technically. I wrote the grants, I administer the grants, I'm passionate about this work, but I mostly want new voices. And so what I said to the select board was, I don't think I should be on the committee, but Tabitha and I both agreed that we would support the committee for as long as the committee wants that support. So, I can be your grunt, I can be your secretary, I can be your facilitator, whatever you want me to be in the beginning, and then I will extract myself over time. It was also imagined in the report that this committee be set up initially as a 5-person committee, because one of the first things we hope the committee will do is look at ways to bring new, fresh, diverse voices onto all town committees and commissions, including this one. So we left it open so that there could be 5 people on the committee and they would seek to grow 2 additional people in a subsequent year, bringing new and fresh voices. The select board was concerned that they wouldn't get people interested in being on this committee. It's always a challenge to get people to serve in a volunteer capacity. So thank you for being here. But we've actually had more interest than the 5 positions. And so, what I said at select board was, well, there's no reason why interested community members can't just come and participate as much as possible.
Yeah.
So, that's fine. But a year from now, if the committee feels like growing the size of the committee would be useful or valuable in order to have more hands and lighter work, then you can do that or not. But obviously, I would assume that the equity committee would welcome as many voices as come and share their thoughts anytime. So.
I'd like to raise one point that I haven't heard come up yet, and I knew we would get to this point in our society when whites got close to not being the majority. And like we're there, that's like where we are. And I hear periodic voices of downtrodden whites feeling abused and feeling like, everybody's looking out for everybody else but me. And I just think, if we have any graphics or whatever, let's have a white farmer on it, and let's have a white person trimming a tree or something, so that the entire society gets the sense that it is a whole thing and that it's not, an army of diversity coming to get them.
Right, it's not about dividing.
Yeah,
It's
and
about
we
opening, not
haven't-
closing.
Well, we had
ever
executing
really-
on the board earlier, so.
That's right.
We could just kill them all. I mean, not actually, that's a really terrible thing to say.
That's a great point, that, I mean, maybe we wanna add that, on our equity in Bristol it means everyone.
Right, but we
It's
need
not an
to,
us versus
we
them.
need to, articulate some of
So-
that group so that
We need to tell people
everybody
so
does
that they don't feel
feel.
threatened.
And,
Right.
and if they do feel that they're being discriminated against, that they also can come
Yeah,
and talk it through. And again, it may be just like with some of the things that I found on Human Relations Commission, that it was just a a lack of interface and, you know, that you could problem solve and people who have not been in the sort of managerial level, these are not the people that show up for meetings. It's not in their culture. And so somehow they need to know that they are also as
Yeah.
equally
I can
valuable.
put that up on hopes for committee, something about like communicate, you know, a non-threatening communication of the message of inclusion. And somebody else had written something about, I can't remember, there was another one up there that said something to that end.
Right, so if somebody does feel a grievance, they should present
Of
it so
course,
that they
yeah.
don't just
Absolutely.
have that grinding away in themselves and,
Right.
and in their friend groups.
Super point.
Well, and I think also I found that a lot of education around privilege and biases is like, so in youth in particular, a lot of education around privilege and biases is coming from TikTok or Facebook or Instagram. It's not necessarily the best. And so and I talk to kids about this, and it's the same conversation, you know, because they're having conversations at home also of how to acknowledge your, like, having a privilege does not mean that you have a perfect life. Or having a bias does not mean you're a hateful
Oh, that's what it
person.
was. Somebody said something
Because
about.
it gets thrown around a
I think that
lot.
was me.
Shut down conversation, you know,
Yeah,
not just say, okay, take a second to pause and look, okay, look where you're, you know, look where you're doing well versus somebody else. A lot of times it gets thrown out there like, okay, shut up, this is white male. Shut that, say, just, you have no involvement in this discussion. I'm like, a person I can talk to,
Right.
I'm not, you know,
right.
not trying to dismiss you or you try not, you know, it's.
And so I think, and exactly, like, I think there's, and I think it's if people come from a place of hurt and fear and defensiveness,
Mhm.
but it's, like, having certain privileges doesn't mean that you can't contribute to conversation, because you might not have all the privileges, and it's also like, even if you have all the privileges, you might still be a worthwhile voice because you can speak to certain things, and so being being able to acknowledge a privilege, and then also be like, and that's okay, like, it's good to acknowledge your privilege and just allow it to be, like, you know, you own a house, that doesn't mean you have to feel guilty for owning a house, and that some people don't own a house, you own a house. And then let's use your privilege to make sure that other people can buy houses too, because that's really nice. And so I think also on that, education around, so I think one of the ways to navigate that also is education around, like, what does it mean when we talk about privileges and biases, and what does it actually mean to have privilege, and that it doesn't make you a bad person to have privilege or to feel biases.
Well, we all have bias. We all
Exactly.
carry bias in
And it's
some
a-
way, shape, or
And
form.
you should assume that you have it and acknowledge when you do, and then like, oh, okay, cool, and then move on.
Well, all of our grandparents taught us to have biases and knew that that was because we were better than everybody else.
Of course,
No
God, my
matter who
parents
we are,
still
we're
do
better than
that.
everybody else.
And media does, and our friends do, and our community does,
Sure,
and
it's
the
natural.
schools do, because non-Aid is better than Virgins or whatever.
Well,
like,
that's true.
Yeah,
No, I mean, yeah, I'm from Essex here, so.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
You
but
guys
like
all live in your
biases
fancy
are, I
tech
think there's
center.
like this, I think the concept that biases are implicit is a really hard thing to teach people. That like you have not, because I think they're demonized and privilege is demonized, and so like you know.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that maybe I missed it when you were talking, right, reading through that, but was community education. Like, how do we make this not just available to town employees and the select board, and make sure that, you know, we're using inclusive language, which is all very important, but how can we also help to bring some ideas to our community?
And have it be like guerrilla education, because people don't show up. Like,
Well, yeah, I mean, we're gonna have a workshop on diversity and equity. You may or may not get people to show up. I mean, we were just talking about, to bring it back to the work that I was telling you that I did, that there was a particular group that wanted, that didn't want to hear about it, like specifically said, we're good, like we've done that already, you know, it's all done. And so we were talking with one of our instructors, and the instructor brought in, it was based in literature, children's literature. And she just kind of went through and said, you know, these are different books that we use. And this, when we made it practical, when we made it something they could use, it made more sense to them. And it wasn't as triggering as, you know, They felt like they were being told they were doing something wrong, and that's not the
That's a
point.
huge thing, yeah,
Yeah.
to like, we're not trying to make you bad or wrong, this is a great town, this is why we love it, it is a great town.
Yeah.
Let's keep growing the greatness. I had planned to wrap up at 8:30. I'm optimistic we can actually get through these little logistical items about the terms of committee members, the meeting schedule that you guys want, and leadership structure for the committee. I had on here communications, open meeting law, and conflict of interest policy, but I have nothing on that because I do not know what the town's policies are on that. I was thinking I might get that, but I didn't. So that's to the point about onboarding, we have none. So why don't we just talk about these three things briefly, and then we'll talk about next steps and where we're gonna go from there. Does that work for folks? Okay, so for terms, you've all been appointed to the committee. There are 5 people on the committee and an alternate. The alternate doesn't need a term because we hope the alternate will just either keep being an alternate each year or step up to the committee if that's something they want to do. The suggestion was that one person have a 1-year term, 2 people have a 2-year term, 2 people have a 3-year term, and then all of the terms will be 3 years after that moving forward, so that that's the way they'll roll over, but to get started, that we stagger it in that way. So if you have an opinion for a 1, 2, or 3-year term, say so. If not,
I'm just saying, I'm fine with the 1 year for now.
anyone else?
I would do a 1-year term.
Okay, now you're gonna have to fight about it. There's only one person.
So only one person can have it? All right.
Battle royale.
No, you spoke up first. What? Yeah, one more. One more. No, you spoke up first, Fran. Go ahead. That's fine. I'll do 2.
Anyone else tell you? Yep, I don't care, so just tell me, I'm writing
How
it
many
down.
was it for
I'll
each?
say 2. You have to say so.
I'm not in the running, to be clear.
That's true. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Where in Finland?
I'm technically the town liaison.
So she's an
Oh,
appointee.
So I'm a town employee on the
Okay,
board.
so
for
Brian
whatever I am
is
here. I'm
20.
here. I don't actually
Krista
understand my
is
role, but I'm here.
26.
Yeah.
Who else then? Anika?
So that only one person.
Oh, yeah,
One
only
GM?
one gets the 1. So, and did
What?
Darla say 2 also?
I said 2, yeah.
All right, so the rest of you are 3, so.
We can revisit.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's life is life.
Life is life.
Exactly.
But they can.
I mean, if you guys
they can
leave before
apply
3, it's
for
not
a
like you,
reappointment,
Yeah.
right?
yeah.
They can,
It's not like you're hunted down and dragged.
okay.
Do you know where we live?
Yeah, their addresses though.
What is your pleasure for meeting? Do you want to meet monthly? Do you want to meet every other month? Do you want to meet quarterly? Do you want to be ad hoc? How do you want to move forward?
At least every other month, if not monthly.
I feel like monthly to start,
I
because there's a
think
lot, even as we're figuring out our organization and stuff.
It's their monthly.
But I can't do more than monthly. I have too many other things.
And should we attempt to have it be on this night as a recurring thing? This room tends to be fairly in demand. And they like us to meet here so that we can record. So if we did that, what are we the,
That's the 4th Wednesday.
we're the 4th Wednesday.
Anything but Thursdays for me, Thursdays. All the other board stuff on.
Thursdays are the worst. Everyone meets on Thursdays.
Yeah, I don't have the
Everyone.
town schedule, so if we do something other than the 4th Wednesday, I'll have to check with the town. But if you guys are like, let's just set it and roll, then, all right. So I will double check with the town administrator tomorrow that the 4th Wednesday can happen. And we'll do monthly for the foreseeable future and decide from there. And then the next thing is structure. So historically, or traditionally, shall we say, the town committees have a chairman and a co-chair and a secretary. I would recommend that this committee break that mold and be zany. I don't really care what you do, but I would say that one of the things, if I have a great hope for this committee, is that engagement is a big piece of that. And so I would like to see you each carry and pass the torch. And I don't know if there's a name for how that works, but basically the
Maybe like
things
a
that,
conch shell or something.
I think so, I have one, I
The
literally have
talking
one I could
stick,
bring.
yeah.
But my thought is that, you know, there's sort of 4 things that I see have to happen at each cycle, right? So somebody has to prepare for the meeting, what's gonna happen at the meeting, which probably involves posting it, but we don't really know how or what, but whatever, talking to the town about that. Then somebody needs to sort of manage the meeting, try to keep things rolling. And then we need to track our decisions and actions, and report that to the select board, the town administrator. So it's kind of like a little cycle there. So if a person was holding the conch shell and they prepare for the meeting and they manage that meeting, and somebody else in the meeting is tracking the decisions and the actions, they could hand that person the shell, and then that person
That's the next one.
could do the next one.
I love that.
So we have sort of 2 people rocking and rolling through there.
I love that.
I mean-
People take turns.
I'm just throwing that out there because it's 8:27 and I apologize. I had planned to do this in a little bit more of a brainstorming module, but, I'm driving the track.
I like it. We do something like that with the team that I work with in my job. You know, every Friday we have a meeting and we just rotate who facilitates the meeting and prepares it and does the notes.
So you all have a little skin in the game.
Yeah, and it, yeah.
Okay.
But also it's also just easy to trade. Like if I can't make it that meeting, can I trade with Brian for, so.
And we can all
But
support
I
each
think we
other.
can be flexible that way.
Yeah.
And then I can play whatever role you want me to play, so I can be the support assistance to, you know, I can provide the shell. And whatever else is needed there, or I can just step back and I can sit with Jim.
I do like the idea of the meeting being open.
Mhm.
Absolutely,
Because even my wife was like, can I come? And I said, I don't know. So
absolutely,
Yeah, I think the more voices we have, the better.
right, I think so too. So, all right, so, what do we call that structure? Are we pulling it past the?
That's the con.
How do you pronounce that word?
Is it conch?
Conch,
Conch.
conch shell.
Conch shell.
It's
So,
not conch
our
shell.
structure's gonna be past the conch.
Yes, I like it.
Okay.
it's not past the
And
kitchen.
I
We're
would
gonna
like.
trademark it right now because we're gonna go
So it's so
viral.
random to do about it.
Mail it to yourself.
In this meeting, Darla has been taking notes. I think that, I don't know that we need to take minutes per se. I do think that we should, figure out how to do that AI wise. So that if the town wants us to have minutes, we'll just let some artificial intelligence write those minutes. But I would love to see the group come out of each meeting with a summary of actions and decisions. And if those are assigned to a particular person, we say who it is.
Does the AI become secretary, the
Yeah.
secretary?
I think so.
I'm very cautious about the AI because of my accent sometimes it doesn't
Okay.
understand very well. So I think that we could try,
Yeah.
but sometimes they don't get it.
They don't get it with us English speakers all the time either, so for sure. I read through my notes for meetings sometimes and I'm like,
And that would be why it's
That's
important
not
to keep a
quite
recording too.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'd like to suggest that, if everybody is out in the community listening, then when you get together, you maybe need to go around the table and see what each person has heard. And, because that's where you're gonna start getting your issues. And that there should be, a list kept for each meeting for here's the issues we heard. Because, then you get all excited about one issue, but then, 6 months later, you should read through those old
Yeah.
lists and say, here's this other issue,
Mhm.
the different parts of it that keep showing up.
It should also probably be an email that people could submit things to.
The commission that I was on, the work was done in committees. But I was the community relations committee, and then the justice committee that was doing the legal stuff, that had maybe 3 or 4 people. It doesn't matter, how many people are working on a committee, can be a committee of one, but it was helpful to have kind of a name for, for your committee, your interest, what the thing is that you're gonna target on, so that other people that hear stuff can call you up and say, hey, and I think that would make it easier to get information or information that comes through the town or whatever, to the person who is, gonna, like I was the person on the commission, I was the youngest ever appointed, and there was a racial hotspot.
Yeah.
And so I went there, and somebody met me and said, you shouldn't come in here, because there's somebody that would kill you if you did, but he didn't know there was such a thing as a human relations
Right.
commission. And he got all interested. A year later, he applied and became a commissioner, and then he went on in all sorts of politics. And,
I love that idea of a little round table, if this group can be ears on the ground, bring those thoughts. So for the next agenda, following our roundtable, the first and main topic will be discussion around vision, mission, goals, and how to build that if there's, working to have an inclusive mission building process. And we'll make sure that these materials are available to the committee for future meetings, so that you can refer to that if you want to as we go ahead. So for actions coming out of this meeting, I will get these materials to you electronically. And I'll also make sure that all of our materials that I'm providing to you here, like these, if you want to pass those around, the grant report stuff, and all the things that I handed out will be electronically to all of you and also to the town, because I think they're going to post it.
Or we can have a little link off the page, like that
Sure.
one committee and
Exactly.
where all our stuff.
I was also just wondering quickly, Porter, if you know, like with the recommendations, was there any looking at like what would be like high priority, low effort?
That's a thought that I had too.
Like what do we
Because
want
I
as like, oh, it'd be so cool if we could like take immediate action on some really low hanging fruit as we're talking about like
Yeah.
some of the big
So
picture
is that
stuff.
what we
So,
advise?
I think you guys can work on that next week. I think
so maybe if next month,
Next month.
Oh, next month.
maybe if we could all
Yeah.
look
I mean,
at it, if we have
to be
time beforehand. to be
All
like,
our welcome here banner sounds like a
That's-
pretty low
That's what I'm
hanging fruit.
thinking, and it's like, sometimes I spin my wheels on these big things, it's like, let's just do that, like,
And so, yeah, and look at you'll look at the
Too
next
bad
step
not
sheet
unfortunately.
of things that are, that
Yeah.
were ideas to do. And then you can also look at the grant, because there's money in the grant to do all of the things that were pretty much knock it off. And that next steps was developed with great input from a lot of people in the state who are helping Tabitha and me. Yeah, I wrote the next steps, but with, at the beginning, it says who weighed in to provide support on that.
I won't be able to be the next meeting. I might make it online, but I don't know because I'm going to my country. And I don't
What
know,
is your country?
Colombia. So I don't know if I will be in a place with internet access. Not that there is not internet in my country, it's that
Yeah,
sometimes I go
Yeah,
to places that there is no internet.
If you could make it great,
If I can make it,
and
yeah.
if not, if you wanna send thoughts ahead of time.
Yes, and also if the mission and vision and goals are discussed that they are not approved, so I can have my
Yeah.
input in the
Yeah.
future.
That's, I think that's a good idea anyway, but I don't think that this committee needs to rush to
Yeah,
that, so you can explore that, and we can let the select board know that you'll be working on it in July, and then working on it again in August with
Okay.
finalizing that,
Thank
and then you'll have time to weigh in. And I think to your point, the group may want to do some outreach around that, so, it's probably not gonna be like a one, like, okay, we wrote that, we're done, and now we're, so, great.
One suggestion for you, I'll back me up on this. There's certain laws that you have to follow. Appointed by the select board, so you are required to take minutes. You are required to post a notice of the meetings 48 hours in advance at, was it 3 locations in town?
I think it's
One
three,
here, one at the
yeah,
library, I don't know where, third one is,
Front porch forum is considered one of them.
Yeah,
okay, and then you are required to submit your results of your minutes to the town clerk within 5 days after your meeting.
Okay.
Just
So if we
you
send
keep
it to
on-
Sharon, then she'll help us figure out how to
Right,
get
just
there,
so
ready to
you
go.
keep it ahead of the war.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so does Sharon do that for all the committees? Like, is she a person
Yeah.
that can send it? Okay, that's
All,
great.
all the boards and commissions. so-
Sharon's a great, like, if you need anything.
Yeah.
Awesome.
She might be grumpy about it, but
So
she
many
can do
hats.
it.
so many hats.
She knows how to
Thanks for
do it
getting us
all.
together.
Thank you all for
Thank you, Porter.
participating.
Yeah, good to meet you.
Thanks, good. Great, I'm gonna turn off the recording.
Just having the, like, there's one thing.